Magandang hapon o magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Hello and good afternoon or good morning, everyone. Just to let you know, this event is being recorded. I am Jane Stedheit, and I have short brown hair and eyeglasses. I'm the Asian Pacific American Network in Agriculture, or APANA, Engagement Officer. I work for the Farm Service Agency here in Nebraska. I was born and raised in the Philippines and a proud American. I'm so glad that you can all join us for this observance of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. On behalf of APANA, in the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights, we thank you. Maraming salamat po. Our theme for this year is connecting and healing Asian Pacific American cuisine, more than just comfort food. APANA chose this theme because of the central importance of food in our many cultures, including unity and health. There are some misconceptions regarding our food, and we hope to dispel some today, as we are all more alike than we are different. So for today's program, Josephine Liu, APANA Vice President, will give the welcoming remarks, followed by the leadership address by the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights, Ms. Monica Rainge. Our keynote speakers from Piney Street Market, DC, will highlight the healing and connecting qualities of Asian Pacific American food from a historical and cross-cultural perspective. And finally, Assistant General Counsel Mai Din will give closing remarks. In conjunction to this event, and as listed in the Secretary and Deputy Secretary's email for the month and this event, APANA is doing a recipe contest. So please submit your favorite family recipe to share with us. Thank you to those who already have. And we're excited to share our culture and take you to a delectable and informative journey today. Without further ado, here is Joe. Take away, my friend. Enjoy.
Thank you, Jane. Greeting, everybody. My name is Josephine Liu, and I am the Vice President of the Asian Pacific American Network in Agriculture. It is my great honor to welcome you to this wonderful celebration of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. For those who cannot see me, I am a Chinese woman with short hair and glasses. As a child growing up in a Chinese household, we often prepare food together as a family. So I want to talk to you about something that resonates me as a foodie, which is important to many of you on a daily basis. When people ask me where I work, my answer is that I work in USDA because food is my first love. Also, working at USDA allows me to move all over the US for various types of jobs. I started my career as technician at USDA's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, and now I'm a marketing specialist in the Foreign Agricultural Service. I often tell people I'm like a tumbleweed because USDA is a diverse agency that provides the opportunity to do many interesting things, never a dull moment in my life. The theme of this year's APANA event to honor Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander is connecting and healing Asian Pacific American cuisine, more than just comfort food, which brings back many wonderful memories of my childhood. As a child, I loved helping my Nai, also known as Grandma, to make dumplings from scratch. I remember my cousins and I would help her chop veggies and mix the ingredients, putting it out in dumpling skins that we roll out by hands. My cousin and I loved it when our family members told us how tasty the dumplings were and what a great job we did. Those instances of high praise brought us to heaven. Food is more than comfort and celebration. It is medicine, both for the body and the soul. Whenever my friends are sick, I will cook a large batch of bone broth with ginger, ginseng, and jujube, and other helpful ingredients to put them on the mend. My love for food continues and led me to browse for special and unique ingredients. I love going to supermarkets and farmers market to find new and interesting ones. Along the way, I have learned from vendors a lot of interesting recipe using their veggies. For example, I recently discovered sorrel and learned what to do with the leafy green plant. It is a great, it is a great veggie that is high in iron and pairs well fish because of its lively flavor. I also love going to food events. It was at one of those events I came across a Chinese street market in Washington, D.C. You're going to hear from their team today. Anyway, I got on the listserv for your newsletter, which includes amazing dishes and tells about each dish history. This got me thinking about how food is not only delicious, but it is clear that everything we eat also has a story behind it. That's why this year I approached Susan Jean, the founder of a Chinese street market, to share how Asian foods influence and contribute to American culture,
Right, I'm trying to figure
both
out
in
how
terms
to
of
make this
cuisine and
go down.
health. With the help of Yunxian Kai, a doctoral scholar historian, I hope you will enjoy today's program with Suzanne and Yunxian's keynote presentation as much as I know I will. Again, welcome to this important and wonderful celebration of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Thank you for participating, and please reach out afterwards with your thoughts and suggestions, or even better yet, a family recipe. Thank you. Back to you, Jane.
My apologies. Thank you, Joe. That was a remarkable and relatable story. And now it is my honor to introduce to you Deputy Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights, Ms. Monica Rainge.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, colleagues and friends. I want to thank you for joining us for this special celebration. I'm Monica Rainge, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights at the USDA. The Office of the Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights is excited to collaborate with the Asian Pacific American Network in Agriculture to host this amazing virtual event, Connecting and Healing Asian Pacific American Cuisine, more than just comfort food. At the USDA, we take this time each May to celebrate Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month to reconfirm the importance of ensuring equity and opportunity for Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders throughout the United States. Here at USDA, we have nearly 3,700 employees who identify as Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islanders. That is about 42% of the USDA's total workforce. On behalf of Secretary Vilsack and Deputy Secretary Brennan, I want to thank you for all that you do to make the USDA a more diverse, inclusive, and equitable place to work. Thank you for blazing trails of opportunity for those who will follow in your footsteps. And so today, it is with great pride that we gather to celebrate this year's theme, Building Legacy Together, our community's journey of strength and resilience. This theme really pays tribute to generations who have paved the way for greater opportunity for your communities and strengthen the fabric of our nation. Today's event highlights the healing qualities of food and focuses on how all people are able to find connection through food. Agriculture connects us all to good food. But agriculture is so much more than just food. Agriculture is at the very core of what connects us all to our values of democracy, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all. According to the 2017 Census of Agriculture, more than 25,300 producers identified as Asian Americans and almost 5,300 identified as Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders. These producers operate more than 18,000 farms across the United States. These producers are almost 7% of Asian producers have military experience, while over 13% of Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander producers have military experience. Through USDA programs, agencies, and leaders are striving to ensure equitable delivery of technical assistance and investments, and removing basic barriers such as language for underserved Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islander communities. At USDA, we remain committed to values of equity, inclusion, and civil rights that are rooted in justice and equal opportunity for each other and those we serve. And so with that, I wish that you enjoy this program this afternoon, and thank you for taking time to join us.
Thank you, Deputy Assistant Secretary. We appreciate your time and to learn more about our representation. Next is the keynote presentation. Our first speaker, Susan Shen, is the founder and cultural curator of Chinese Street Market DC, a collaborative platform that showcases Chinese culture through traditional regional Chinese food recipes. Also joining us from the UK is Yujuan Kai, the in-house scholar of Chinese Market DC. She earned her master's in Global International and Comparative History at Georgetown University. She is a PhD candidate in history at the University of Cambridge. Please welcome Susan Shen and Yujuan Kai. Ladies, you may have the floor.
Thank you, Jane, for introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Susan Shen, the founder and culture curator at Chinese Street Market in DC. I'm very excited to be here with all of you and my in-house scholar, Yushun Cai, and celebrate this year's AAPN month with all of you. Thank you so much for this opportunity with the event. The event hosts Asian Pacific American Network in Agriculture at USDA. Thank you so much for working closely with us in the past 2 months on this project. We are very honored. So, food is a very big topic, and it is also a topic that relates to everyone's daily lives. Food is also one of the few decisions in life that people can make on their own, for themselves. What to eat, how to eat it, and when to eat it, all of these decisions above. The Asian cuisine plays a big part in the world of cuisines. In my opinions, this cuisine often describes as traditional, ethnic, in someone's nostalgic memories, or with their Asian heritage. Today, I'm going to talk about something deeper and something that is original and how it is evolving into the traditions and cultural styles that we're seeing today. Well, as a Chinese myself, I'm not pretending that I am the expert on every cuisine from every Asian culture. And I'm not also pretending that I'm a profound philosopher at the world beings. But thanks to our in-house scholar, Ms. Tai, we were able to extend our research and spend time on reading related books on this topic for this project. We're hoping to give you some inspiration to continue exploring for your personal knowledge going forward. So, as many of you seen, at Asian culture events, ethnic food is always the center of attention. People standing in long lines just to wait for their terms of instant satisfaction. What is not instant is the thought with regard to why these dishes are served in certain ways and in certain seasons only. Are people only interested in food itself? Are they also intrigued by the culture aspect of these dishes? Well, being a farmer's market culture vendor myself, I have seen so much interest regarding to what we thought we brought to the markets. I believe people are excited about experiencing the culture at our tent, and food is just one of the great vehicles to do so. It is true that as Charles Fan, who is the owner and executive chef of San Francisco's famed restaurant called Slanted Door, he suggests in his cooking book, Vietnamese Home Cooking, he says that the readers will enjoy the recipes and Vietnamese food all the more if they start thinking and eating like a Vietnamese person. Oftentimes, when we go to a place with different cultures and customs, we tend to stay in our comfort zone, and we tend to order just one dish that we always have ordered over the times. At the same time, not to realize that we're missing out a real experience here. Luckily, with our generation, with more advanced technology and Web 2.0 and the trendy social media usage, our generation was able to step out from our comfort zone quickly and experience different culture and food, virtually through the eyes of industry predecessors like Anthony Bourdain, who travels around the world and rendering the culture aspect of food in front of our eyes. This is also our mission at Chinese Street Market. We'd like to serve as a trustworthy connectors for food and culture, removing language barriers for better culture understanding. We work with seasonal ingredients from local farmers in authentic food systems, putting these concepts and culture context into conversations with American food scenes. So now we want to jump to a big picture for a moment. Let's talk about food and culture. But where are these cultures coming from? About this question, we'll need to start looking at the commonalities in cosmology of Chinese philosophy regarding the view of nature and the universe. The philosophies then also viewed as the base to approach the traditional Chinese way of thinking, living, and cooking. These philosophies have traveled outside of the border of China and have influenced throughout other Asian countries for many years. So before any formation of ancient Chinese philosophies, certain concepts of Asian agrarian regions have already dominated Chinese thoughts and society. That is, before any formed philosophy ideology, including Taoism, there are a few important pre-philosophy thoughts we need to mention here. First thought is the continuity between nature and human beings, or the interaction between the world and human society. The second thought, the rhythm of constant flux and transformation in the universe, the return or revision of all things to Tao from which it was emerged. The third thought was the worship of ancestors, the cult of heaven and divine nature of the sovereign. So after giving this context of pre-philosophy thoughts that is dominant in ancient Chinese society, now let's talk about when these thoughts are described in a formed philosophy faction, the Taoism. In Taoism, universe is believed to be composed of elements, and elements compose phenomena. There are balanced and continuous transformations between phenomena and its opposites. During these changes, the continuity and infinity of nature and universe generate. Does this sound complicated? Let me break it down a little bit more. In the transformation process, we see the very patterns and dynamics of nature. Ancient Chinese call these patterns Tao or Taos. So Tao is a very abstract concept, but most often recognized as the 5 basic elements, also called Wu Xing in Chinese. So the 5 basic elements or Wu Xing explain the changes in ancient Chinese cosmos. And these elements are fire, water, wood, metal, and earth. The interactions among these elements follow the order of mutual generation and mutual overcoming. For instance, look at the picture on this slide. So this picture depicts the system that follows the pattern as below. For example, you see the earth enforces the metal, and the metal enforces the water. So that's followed the cycle as you see the gray arrows and going outside of the cycle by elements. If you have more questions, you can contact me later for more details. So at the Chinese street market during the Lunar New Year celebration this year, our very own creation, the fourth season short cookies or shortcakes or su was created by our guest chef, Chef Jing. She was inspired by Wuxing and the cycle of nature. Seasons have Wuxing as well. Looking at the picture on this slide, we see there are 4 shortcakes in 4 colors. Each one represents one season and one element. For instance, spring represents wood element, and spring season is a period of growth, generation, vitality, and movement. The Chinese word shou on the top means longevity, which resonates the meaning of spring. The main ingredients in this shortcake are young dates, which grow in the season of spring, as opposed to dry dates, the red one in the winter. This completes the concept of our shortcake for the season of spring. So at this moment, you will ask about why there are 4 seasons, but 5 basic elements. They all have to deal with something more deeper than this slides will have to tell you. This knowledge of cosmos and feng shui explained in this book called I Ching, which is also the book of Qing. So we talk about the commonality of Chinese cosmology in philosophy section. Now let's talk about one of the significant concepts relating to Chinese cosmology. That is the utility of nature, man, and heaven and man. In plain words, it suggests that man is an integral part of nature. We have these nice quotes here you can read. Here, note that heaven and nature are often interchangeable. You can read them in English translation or classic Chinese text here. This concept was initially elaborated by Chuanzhu, in ancient China. For folks who are not familiar with Chinese philosophy, Chuanzhu, he was a student of Lao Tzu, who was known for his thoughts in Tao Te Ching, who was also the founder of Tao faction in the big 4 philosophy factions in ancient China. Their timeline was similar to the Western philosophers like Aristotle. So continued with utility, heaven, and man. Let's talk about the man here. What about man in the nature and the universe? That is, man in nature and the universe bears the whole dynamics of nature in his or her own body. That is also called their internal universe. In other words, man's body is microcosm of entire universe. So Wuxing 5 elements was applied to man and also exists in man. So on this picture on the slide depicts Wuxing 5 elements of man. As you can see, the interdependency of organ networks in this body was said to be a cycle of 5 things, and so mapped by the Chinese doctors on the 5 phases. You see in the very middle, there's an icon of yin and yang. From here, you can read as each element is associated with one yin and yang meridian pair in the picture. For instance, heart is mapped on the fire element, and kidney is mapped onto the water element. Due to the nature of fire and water, the dynamics between heart and kidney can be seen as that kidney has a controlling cycle effect pointing to the heart, and heart has insulting cycle effect. So the traditional Chinese medicine was built upon 1,000 years of observative empirical knowledge that has been gradually mapped onto modern scientific equivalents. The complexity of traditional Chinese medicine is an extension of Chinese philosophies. This can be seen because our daily regular diet and our traditional Chinese medicinal recipes all come from nature, and they enter the body of man through the mouth, which is to say, food is your medicine. So this is the most significant wisdom for health living from ancient China. In recent years, Western countries have gradually started to adopt the approach to food as a medicine. Doctors prescribing food therapy, etc. In China, we have long considered food to be medicine and to have therapeutical effects. Prevention is better than the cure has always been guiding philosophy of traditional Chinese medicine. And that approach informs China's entire culinary traditions. Chinese philosophy is also meant to serve as an ethical and practical guide. Hence, for the Chinese and other nations of East Asian and Southeast Asian, food is meant not only cure the body, but also help to cultivate the individual's character and personality. Okay, after understanding the Chinese way of thinking, we move on to the Chinese way of eating, cooking, and of course, way of living. We've just mentioned about all ingredients come from nature. So every ingredient is an integral part of nature as well. Like man, every ingredient bears its own nature and characteristics. I'm going to summarize the points and give you some examples that you can have a feeling of it. The first thing to mention is that to eat what is in season. That is, to follow the pattern of nature. This is from one of the oldest principles in Chinese culinary tradition. Confucius, living more than 2,500 years ago, also advised not eat what is not in the season. And the reason is epitomized by the ancient philosopher Chuang Tzu in his own words that he said, accordance with the central elements of nature is the regular way to preserve the body, to maintain the life, to nourish our parents, and to complete our terms of lives. In this picture, you can see we highlighted this Chinese rice dumplings for one of the big holidays, which is Dragon Boat Festival. And it applies to nature. We use the ingredients from that season and make these kind of traditional food. So let's continue. Other than philosophers, and of course, everyone knows that the produce in season is the tastiest and freshest. Food seasonality is celebrated by the entire Chinese community, from the elite to the ordinary people. For example, the literati composed poems called A Fisherman's Song, which talks about the seasonal luxuries. It says, in front of the western hills, white egrets fly up and down. In peach-mirrored stream, mandarin fish are full grown. In this poem, the second line indicates that the short period of peach blossom in spring is the best season for mandarin fish. This is to say that outside of the philosophies, man in society has already developed survival and general institutional agrarian knowledges of how to be harmony with nature. For many years, folk knowledge has passed down over generations about how to interact with nature through food. So let's look at another example on this slide. This example is wildly popular ballads among the southeastern coastline of China, which instructs people when to eat what from the sea. The people in Zhejiang province, which is also one of the provinces on the coastline, sings. The first month, plum blossoms are blooming in snow. The second month, rosy red mullets. The third month, silver prophets braising with baby lake herds. The fourth month, Chinese herrings with their scales on. All these months follow the lunar calendar. In this ballad, besides specifying the season for a certain kind of fish, this ballad also tells the way to cook them. Did you notice on the third line, it says several prophets grazing with baby leek hearts. Actually, if you're ever visiting China, the only one Michelin 3-star restaurant in mainland China serves this traditional Zhejiang province dish. It is also called home-styled braised profit shown on this slide. Their profits is braised and garnished with baby leek hearts exactly the way described in this ballot, and prepared in the most rustic and simplest way. The leeks on the top of the fish brings flavor to the other level. In addition, China has a very long coastline, so the climate and the variation of produce are also different from place to place. In this Zhejiang province ballot, it is given that the third month is for savory profits and the fourth month for Chinese herrings. But when we move down to south, to Fujian, to Guangdong, people there will say the fourth month is for mackerels. Though the season for savory profits in this third month of the Lunar calendar year still holds true for people in Zhejiang province. Let's continue with all these recipes. So next, because each person has their own unique constitution, a good chef or wise home cook are expected to choose ingredients that fit the guest's needs or their health conditions. Traditional Chinese medicine physicians may see two patients with identical symptoms, but treat them with different custom medicines. The logic behind the different medicine from formulation is that, according to traditional Chinese medicine, each person is born with their own elemental constitution, which is altered and distorted as one moves through life, and influenced by factors such as stress, lack of sleep, incorrect diet. Following this tradition, Chinese medical perspective, the Chinese medicine and food is consumed to balance Wu Xing 5 elements in man's body, so that one can approach the coherence of man with nature. It is from here that traditional of food therapy derives. Plus, we also have schools of herbal cooking, and the former focuses on nourishing and supplying, while the later is more about curing because it incorporates more medical ingredients, but still tastes good. So on the picture on this slide, the Chinese street market has also incorporated such thoughts into our offerings. For example, last summer, we offered the taro root section in the mid-humid summer, not only because taro root is harvested from summer, but also for the reason that taro roots benefit the digestive system exhaustion from the humidity. In this very well-known ancient Chinese herb medicine book called Compendium of Materia Medica by Li Shizhen, it says, taro corms, which is taro roots, comfort stomach and intestines, moisturize skin, stimulates smoothness and the free flow. If consumed cold, taro roots treat the waxing heat and quench thirst. Taro roots also enrich the body and brighten skin, whet the appetite and unlock intestine closure. If boiled with fish, taro roots help align stomach flow, nourish and regulate the central qi. And at our Chinese street market upcoming offerings, we're working on the launching our herb soup concept. We're very excited about it. The next point I want to make is to emphasize the balance of flavors and textures in Asian cuisines. In both a single dishes and a multi-meal course, this is a common belief among all East Asian culinary traditions. You will never see or find a proper main course dish in a real Chinese, Korean, Japanese, Vietnamese, Thai, or Malaysian food meal. More often, it is a collection of dishes that contains a mixture of texture and employ a variety of cooking techniques. For example, at home, I will pair a steamed whole fish and a sizzling clay pot with some balanced or stir-fried greens and some rice or congee for me and my partner, are showing on this picture on the left. If I'm preparing a feast for 6 to 8 people, I will have 2 to 3 appetizers, some served hot, others cold, and some vegetarian, some non-vegetarian, followed by a poultry and then the seafood. And then comes the palate cleansing greens, either blanched or stir-fried. At the beginning and the very end, we will serve some noodles, dumplings, or desserts. As you can see at the picture on this slide on the right, this picture shows a typical Shanghainese Lunar New Year event eve menu. Also, in Japan, people call a set of a meal composed of well-matched dishes as kitchen harmony. And a typical pattern is ichiyu sunset. In daily use, it roughly means 1 bowl of rice, 1 bowl of soup, 1 fish or meat, and 2 veggie-based dishes. It's very balanced, isn't it? You can see on the picture on the slide. So last but not the least, as I've mentioned, food is not only for the body, but also for the soul and personality as well. For example, drinking tea, consumption of plain food such as whole wheat, wheats, and wild grains, vegetarian diet, and fishing is regarded as a noble thing. Also, for example, a person on a spiritual path in India is not supposed to eat meat or too much spice, because the food gives too much, if the food gives too much emotion, and the too much emotion will affect a spiritual practice. That will be another topic with Chinese religions, literature, and the mentality of traditional Chinese scholar officials. Look at this 6 persimmons picture we chose to put it here. This picture was created by a monk called Mu Xi from Southern Song Dynasty in China. Visually, we see only 6 simple-lined persimmons with a big blank space in this picture. The static fruit have different shades and they are in slightly different shapes. However, a senior Zen master would say that they see a self-contained universe and a realm of solitude from this picture. This picture has later traveled to Japan and has great influence on Japanese aesthetic views of later artistic creation and practice. However, when persimmons were always used in Zen practice as an analogy, nobody knows how to articulate the artistic concept of this picture. However, to our topic today, we would say that it could just be that Mu Xi monk, the monk Mu Xi, the Zen master, saw the persimmons tree outside the window during the meditation. So he put the Zen and philosophy he realized at the moment into the fruit of the season, the gift of the nature. As the Zen practitioners are always in the transition of life and between transition of spiritual. I would love to talk more about this next time, but however, let's give the floor to Ms. Yuxun Cai to talk about the next slides.
Thank you so much, Susan, for highlighting the essential concepts on which Chinese and several other East Asian culinary traditions are built, and so many tempting examples illustrating that East Asian cuisine connects man and with nature, and not only body but also soul, and therefore man becomes a more well-rounded person. Thank you, lots of thanks to the conveners and the audience as well for your patience. I'm a student of Ottoman history. I'm a home cook, and I am also one of the Chinese diaspora. Once lived in the States and now in the UK. So to speak, I am an immediate participant, a witness, and a retrospective observer of the development of Asian Pacific cuisine in different periods in this country. In this way, food, its origin, preparation, and consumption is such a magic lens that brings history and present, the community and the individuals, a particular region and a broader world together. Nowadays, in big cities, you can easily find a great variety of Chinese restaurants serving Shanghai dishes or Cantonese and Hong Kong dim sum, or Sichuan hot pot, or Beijing imperial cuisine. Contrary to this colorful picture, we all know that Chinese food was first introduced into this country by the laborers from China in the late 19th century, starting from the stir fries in humble diners. So did other East and Southeastern Asian culinary traditions. The diversification and enrichment of Asian cuisine in the States over the past 150 years detect the thriving of these immigrant communities in the States and reflect their contribution to the development of this country, which we should be proud of. That is to say, food connects the immigrant history and the national history of the States. And in turn, if we explore the stories behind the restaurants and their vendors, we will be amazed by how individual lives are closely linked to the broader history and how an individual became part of the history. At the beginning of our talk, Susan mentioned the renowned Vietnamese chef Charles Phan. He is the inventor of modern Vietnamese cuisine in America. In his two cookbooks and also his autobiographies, The Slanted Door and The Vietnamese Home Cooking, the chef recalls his early years and the tough journey of his family fleeing from China to Vietnam in the 60s and 70s, during the political turmoils, and finally to San Francisco, and how his curiosity for food began, then was nurtured and further polished while exploring the food scene of CA. And likewise, it is not difficult to imagine that every Asian restaurateur has a long story about their experience to share with us. And at the junction of their personal adventure and the tide of history, they see an opportunity to introduce American diners to the world of East Asian food, a very exciting field for social history and oral history. Sorry. I don't know if some of you have the same feeling as me that we immigrants, though we do cook in the way as people in our home countries do, we draw deep inspiration from our traditions, but are in no way trying to reproduce or to transplant them or to represent them, their realities. Neither does Charles Phan or other chefs. The most direct reason is that the availability of those very Asian Pacific ingredients, such as fresh bamboo shoots, water chestnut, green leaf vegetables, freshwater fish, and shellfish, varies from place to place. Also that we're leading a usually American or a Western modern lifestyle. Today, we are commemorating the Asian Pacific heritage rather than culture, because in this term, we fold our appreciation of the challenges in adapting and adjusting to a new environment and the delicate balance we immigrants undertake in our effort to preserve our memories, journeys, and culture genetics. At the same time, we are exposed to a more broader world, from a homogeneous community back in our home country to the US, an intricate, convoluted mosaic of peoples. The supposed unique elements can find their counterparts and parallels. For example, at Whole Foods, people from Mongolia can merely get a bunch of fresh dandelion leaves, with which they will make herbal tea or the filling for dumplings, they call them bus. And at local farmers markets, customers originally from southern China, Vietnam, Greece, and Italy We'll all seize this very season and go for the fragile zucchini flowers, stuff them, dip in batter, then deep fry them. While the Italians will stuff the flowers with ricotta, the Greek will do it with feta cheese, and the Vietnamese and the Chinese will do it with shrimp. Actually, I learned this from my Greek and Italian friends and tried at home. It's unbelievable. And you're not expecting that such a tiny zucchini flower should be a kaleidoscope. And in this communication process, we are refining our understanding of our traditional cooking in a new community of diversity. On the other direction of this two-way interaction, we also see the finest chefs in Asian Pacific cuisine from the West, and they can really grasp the spirits. The American chef Yvonne Orkin, famous for his ramen, and the British chef Pusha Dunlop for her Sichuan dishes, and Australian chef David Thompson for his Thai street food. Jonathan Safran Foer says, food is not rational. Food is culture, habit, craving, and identity. A certain tradition of cuisine is not a heritage belonging to an ethnic or cultural group exclusively. We cherish ours, and we can also embrace others. And that's how American society and cultural identity are shaped. So do other modern metropolitan open states. Thank you. And finally, welcome to visit us at our DMV market locations. And here's the QR code. Welcome to follow us online. And thanks a lot again to our conveners and USDA. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan and Yushuan. That is a very insightful and beautiful presentation. Our food is not only delicious and balanced, it can also heal our bodies and connect all of us. And for closing, I am honored to introduce my dean, Assistant General Counsel for Marketing, Regulatory, and Food Safety Programs Division, where she manages a staff of attorneys providing legal advice to the Agricultural Marketing Service. Please welcome Ms. Mai Dean.
Thank you, Jane. It is my pleasure to close out this fascinating program about the history, philosophy, and role of Chinese and other Asian cuisines. USDA is often referred to as the People's Department. To paraphrase Secretary Vilsack, if you eat, USDA touches you. Today's program reminds us that food connects us all. It connects us to our past, evoking memories of dishes from our childhood and family recipes that may have been handed down from previous generations. It harks back to our immigrant stories, cuisines that were brought here, preserved, and adapted. I am reminded of two beginning farmers I met last year when I visited their farm in California, the Cultural Roots Nursery. Lee Schmidt and Z Hussein shared their stories and their motivation to start their business to grow heritage plants so that others would have access to vegetables and herbs of their culture. Food also connects us across the many parts of the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander cultures. During my visit, Z showcased one of her favorite plants, the taro plant, recalling making dishes using taro leaves with her Pakistani grandmother. During last week's Red Jew at the USDA Farmers Market, Filipino-American chef Paulo Junca taught us how to make laing with taro leaves. And taro features prominently in Native Hawaiian cooking, including poi, which many of us have enjoyed at Luau's. Food also connects us globally, finding common ground across different ingredients. Regardless of region, we will find food on a stick, food stuffed in a roll, food made into noodles. Food brings families and communities together, even across differences. Food is a language of love and shared experiences. Those commonalities remind us that we are all human beings seeking nourishment. On behalf of APANA, I would like to thank Susan Jin and Jushan Kai of the Chinese Street Market DC for a wonderful program. Monica Rainge, Edward Prophet, and Paul Plumboy of the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights for their awesome partnership and collaboration. Peter Reed, Thomasina Brown, and Kayan Lewis for making this virtual program possible. Lucy Cochina for providing ASL interpretation, and Wendy Shandell Tetzlaff for the captions. And to all of you for attending this celebration of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Thank you all.